Hello and welcome to a brief video tour of the Pentax K200D digital SLR. The Pentax K200D is Pentax's entry-level digital SLR model and often is overshadowed by Canon's and Nikon's entry-level options. This video tour promises to show you some of the features of the Pentax K200D and hopefully help you decide if the Pentax K200D is the camera for you. To begin, I would like to give you a quick overview of the camera's specifications and features. The Pentax K200D features a 10 megapixel CCD sensor, presumed by many to have been the one used in the Pentax K10D, in-body image stabilization, and weather and dust sealing, although it is worth noting the camera is not fully sealed unless a Pentax DA Star lens is used. Currently I have the Pentax DA 18-55mm 2 lens mounted on the camera, and it is a great kit lens. It is solidly built and has a very useful manual focusing ring, compared to Canon's and Nikon's kit level option. Now let's have a look at the ergonomics of the Pentax K200D digital SLR. The Pentax K200D is a very solid camera and is very well built. It is also the heaviest of all the entry-level digital SLRs. Some may not like this, but I like a camera that feels very solid and substantial in my hands. And the Pentax K200D does that. The grip is very comfortable and very adequately sized, as you can see. It's very comfortable to hold. There is enough space between the grip and the lens mount. On the left side of the camera, we have a smaller grip, which is presumably there to be used when you're using a Pentax pancake lens, since you really have nothing to hold on to when you're using one of those. And that is a very welcome addition by Pentax. Now let's have a look at the controls and button layout of the Pentax K200D. On the top left hand side we have the mode dial. On the top right hand side we have the shutter release button, which doubles as an on and off switch, and depth of field preview button. Let me demonstrate that now. We also have the exposure compensation button and the greed button, which can be programmed to do various things. We also have the top LCD panel, which displays shooting information. The top LCD panel does not have a backlight, so therefore use in low light is rather limited, but in good light it's a very useful feature to have. And now let's have a look at the controls on the back of the Pentax K200D. Up top on the left hand side we have the flash pop-up button. Below that we have the menu button. Below that we have the delete button. We have the info button, and we have the playback button. On the right hand side on top we have the E-dial, which can be used to change through menus and change various shooting settings. We have the exposure lock button, the 4-way controller, the function button, and the anti-shake on and off switch. On the left hand side of the camera we have the quick raw button, which can be used to change to raw or out of raw really quickly without diving into the menus, which is very useful. And we have the autofocus manual focus switch. Also we have all of the ports, as you can see there. And now let me show you the SD card and memory slot. It's right here, it slides out, and the card pops in and out. Close that up. The back panel is a 2.7-inch LCD with 230,000 pixels. It's a very good LCD, although it could benefit from an anti-reflective coating. Let's have a look at the menu system found in the Pentax K200D. First we have the recording mode menu, which can change things like the autofocus mode and IC metering. Then we have the playback menu, setup menu, which you can format the memory card and adjust the date and time, and the custom function menu, which you can change several settings, 24 to be exact, to customize how the camera works to your liking. It is worth noting that the weird abbreviations that Pentax used to use in their earlier models are all gone, with now easy to read descriptions and setting names. Let's have a look at how you adjust shooting settings on the Pentax K200D, like the white balance, continuous shooting mode, and ISO, as well as the image tone options. You simply press the function button, and there you have it, 5 options which you can change using the dial and control. Let's change the single frame shooting mode to continuous shooting mode by pressing up on it. We have continuous high, which is 2.8 frames per second for 4 frames. And we're going to have continuous low, which is 1.1 frames per second, unlimited shooting. Then we have the self-timer modes. Should be noted that when you use a 2-second self-timer, it's the same thing as using the mirror lockup function on other SLRs. The mirror is locked up, and then 2 seconds later, the shutter releases. So it's the same thing as having a mirror lockup function. Then we have the wireless remote shooting if you have that. And we have the auto bracketing feature, which we can bracket up to 2 exposure values. down to exposure values, whatever you want to set that to. Let's go back and now let's have a look at how you adjust the white balance. Press left on the control dial. And if you notice on the back, we have a preview image actually there. And that's basically a preview image I took earlier. And what's great about this is that you can actually preview the other white balance settings on this single preview image without having to take images with each white balance setting to see if it's just right, which is a really great feature to actually just be able to use one picture to preview all the other white balance settings. Let's have a look at the daylight white balance setting, shade, cloudy, daylight fluorescent, and we have 3 options for fluorescent there. We have tungsten light, flash, and the custom white balance, which you use a gray card or a white card or something white in your image to adjust the white balance to. And the great thing about adjusting the white balance on this camera is that you can actually fine tune it by using this grid here on the right. You can actually adjust the white balance perfectly to suit your needs. So you can never be in a situation where you can't adjust the white balance because you have a whole bunch of options here to change the white balance and adjust it to perfectly fine tune it for whatever situation you're in. Let's go back and have a look at the other options. Let's have a look at the custom image mode or image tones. Basically what we can do here is adjust the image tone, which basically changes the contrast, saturation, and sharpness of images. So basically you have several preset modes like bright, natural, portrait, landscape, vibrant, black and white monochrome. And what's great about all of these settings are that you can actually customize them to your exact needs. You can go down and change saturation, the hue, the contrast, and the sharpness, and also the fine sharpness. So you can fine tune that exactly how you want it to have your JPEGs come out of the camera exactly how you want them to come out. We go back and now let's have a look at the ISO, how you adjust that. Basically you hit right on the controller and basically you have all your ISO settings here, 100 to 1600. I have it set to 1/3 EV stops, so that's why you see all these ISO settings. Also we have the auto ISO function, which functions from ISO 100 to 1600. You can set it to whatever you want it to set, whatever range you want. And we also have the extend dynamic range option, which you can only use ISO 200 to 1600 when using that. But the great thing about that is that it avoids blowing the highlights when you have that on. Occasionally though it does underexpose pictures while you use that, but it's still great because blowing the highlights are sometimes, unrecoverable. Let's go back and we can change the flash settings here. We have the regular flash, red eye reduction, wireless flash mode if we have that equipped, like using an external flash. And we also can adjust the flash compensation here. 1 EV stop up and 1 EV stop down. Let's go back and we have all the menu settings for the Pentax K200D. Let me demonstrate the continuous shooting ability of the Pentax K200D. I'm only going to demonstrate continuous high shooting, which is 2.8 frames a second for 4 frames. Occasionally though, you may get more frames if you're using a high-speed memory card, but don't count on getting too many more frames. Also, I'm using a SanDisk Extreme 3 4GB SD card, which is very fast and usually clears the buffer very quickly, so I can fire off another burst rather quickly. Let me demonstrate that for you now. Let me go to the button, and buffer's cleared. Letting go of the button, and buffer's cleared. So it's not very fast, but it's really fast. Let's have a look at the playback functions on the Pentax K200D digital SLR. Here we have the basic playback screen, which is with an image. Here we have the histogram, RGB histogram, which is great, and the regular histogram there. You have the shooting information, which displays all the information that was used for that shot. Back to the regular shooting mode. And the great thing is it has up to 16x magnification, so you can check your focus and whatnot. It also has a blinking highlight and shadow warning. So basically if you blur the highlights or underexpose the shadows, it blinks. Let me demonstrate that. You can enable it or disable it, but I have it enabled, that way I can quickly see if I blew the highlights or underexposed the shadows. So you can see what's blinking red there means that the highlights are blown. And if you see there's a little yellow spot blinking, that means that the shadows were underexposed. Also, the camera has a handy side-by-side comparison feature. So if you want to compare 2 images side by side, you press the FN button, you press the OK button. And you can compare 2 images side by side. You can change which images you want to compare by using the E dial. The great thing is you can, zoom in on both images at the same time to check focus on both or whatever. Obviously, I don't have 2 images here that are exactly the same, so I can't really demonstrate that too well, but it works great when you do have 2 images that you really need to compare. Another great thing about playback functions of the Pentax K200D is that you can apply certain filter effects to images that you've already taken. You simply do that by pressing the function button and hitting left on the 4-way controller. You can add a filter effect of black and white, picture monochrome, sepia, color. You can actually modify the color of an image, sort of. You can also make it soft. You can do an illustration effect. You can do an HDR effect. You can do slimming effect, and you can adjust the brightness also. Now it's worth noting that the HDR effect is not really true HDR. It just emulates it, and it doesn't look as good as a true HDR, but it gets the job done if you really want to do that. And it's pretty useful sometimes, actually. If you're trying to achieve a certain effect, of course. Another thing the camera can do is in-camera RAW to JPEG conversions, and that's very useful to have as well. And this is the end of the brief video tour of the Pentax K200D. The K200D is certainly a capable camera and a worthy alternative to other entry-level digital SLRs. This video has only scratched the surface as to what the K200D is capable of in terms of features and image quality, and I hope that this video has helped you make your buying decision. Thanks for watching.